to be humble and be open to learning. And that's really a true key to long-term financial success, because you have to always be open to new possibilities, new perspectives on things. And really that's probably something that could help us in all aspects of life.
Welcome to The Path to Wealth, the show about well-being, fulfillment, and financial freedom. I'm your host, Hannes Henschel. Welcome back to The Path to Wealth. Today we have Chris Larsen from Next Level Income. Right now he is in Asheville, North Carolina. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks, Hannes. Great to see you today.
Yeah, awesome. So, let's dive right in. You've originally had a completely different career, but you basically became financially independent because you started educating yourself. So what was your personal journey like?
Yeah, that's. I'm glad you said it that way, because I think, when it comes to being an investor, you really have to put your mind in the right place. And, when I talk to people, when I meet people, they say, oh, you're in the medical device industry. You're an engineer, you're in the medical device industry, you're in sales for almost 2 decades. How did you transition to real estate? How did you figure this out? And what happened was I actually bought my first property at 21. And by the way, if you're listening today and you want to really dive deep into my story, you can get a free copy of my book at nextlevelincome.com. If you click on the book link and fill out the form there, I'll even send you a free copy if you're here in North America. For people that are around the world like you today, Hannes, you can get an ebook for free as well. But so I was trading the stock market. This was in the late 90s, and I see a lot of similarities today with what we've seen in the past couple of years to the stock market back then. And I was doing really well some months, but then there were just trades that would go sideways, and I'd lose thousands of dollars, and I'd be laying there at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I'm thinking, I'm 20 years old. Well, this is not the way to live. This is not, investing, as it were. So I set out on this path to figure out how to be truly wealthy. And the impetus for that was that my best friend passed away when he was 18. I was 19. He was my college roommate. Actually, before he became my college roommate, he was supposed to be. He died about a month before that. And I said, wait a minute. I said, I don't want to let opportunities pass me by. I want to live as full a life as possible. I want to have experiences. And the fact of the matter is, in the world we live in, you need money. You need financial independence to truly have a lot of these experiences, and the time freedom really to have those if you want to do these things. So I read over 250 books. I actually ended up getting an MBA in finance and portfolio management specifically, but I had an undergraduate degree in biomechanical engineering. So after deciding that real estate was my personal investment strategy that I was going to use to become financially independent, I bought my first couple properties. I was 21 years old. And then I rapidly started to run out of money, out of capital. So I had to go get a job. Like a lot of people, I didn't have wealthy parents. Actually, my father died when I was 5 years old. So, in a lot of ways we struggled financially for many years. So I went into this career, but the whole time, Hannes, I was building my portfolio of real estate. I was building my passive income so that when the right time came, I was able to kind of step off that treadmill, if you will, and ultimately, choose what I wanted to do with my time. Now I have 2 boys. They're 10 and 12 today, but this was a couple of years ago when I made that final decision. And I was enjoying what I was doing. I probably could have done it about 5 years sooner, but time was getting compressed doing everything that I was doing, and I ultimately walked away from my W-2 role at that time.
Yeah. That sounds a little bit like a dream for many people to actually walk away from the W-2, but you made it. So yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, and again, I think it was at one point it was a dream, and a dream with a date is a goal, right? And if you assign a plan to that goal, then you ultimately have a pathway to get there. And that's why I wrote my book. That's why we have the course that we have coming out. That's why we have the investment opportunities that we do, is to give people, that have that dream, the actual path to get there.
Yeah. But in order to I guess, not only have the dream, but make it an actionable vision. People
Yes.
kind of need to understand that this is real and tangible. How did you decide that for yourself, that it's actually something that you can do as Chris, you know?
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. So, it's hard, right? We live in this world, especially if you're not raised in a wealthy family, and even wealthy families. I just had a guest on our podcast, and he was talking about working with, families that are worth 9 figures, some even 10 figures. And the question is like, how do you, his name's David York. He was talking about like, how do you teach your children these lessons? So if you're listening and you don't have a wealthy parent, like I did not have a wealthy parent, and you say, well, how do you do this? You need to surround yourself with like-minded people. And let's say you're, I work with doctors for a lot of years, right? Let's say you're a doctor, you're in the hospital, you're in your practice for, many, many hours a day, many hours a week. Well, how do you find, those common voices, those similar voices? Doing what you're doing right now, that's one of those ways. You can listen to podcasts, you can read books. This wasn't an option, right? When you and I embarked on our journey, it was books. I'd go to seminars and I'd meet people and I'd see people that did this on us, and I'd say, well, hang on, how did he do it? And what I did, I was 20, 21, 22 years old, early 20s. I would just ask him, I'd say, hey, how did you do it? Can I take you out to lunch? One of my mentors, Sherman Ragland, up in the DC area, he led one of the local real estate investment groups up there. I said, hey, Sherman, can I tag along with you and see how you do this? He took me into inner city Baltimore when he was doing a real estate deal. So here's this, skinny white kid, dressed all nice, going into inner city Baltimore. I was like, I don't really look the part here. But that doesn't matter, because people with this mindset, it cuts through everything. It cuts through demographics. It cuts through race. It cuts through, everything. People that have this mindset, they know what you and I know. They want to share it. And, you have to find those people. They're out there.
Actually, I love what you just said, and I think our podcast represents that too. It's not about color, it's not about gender. It's really about you wanting it bad enough that you will find the answers, and there's people out there that are willing to share it. And it's actually right. I mean, there is obviously maybe some doors open faster if you have a certain ethnicity, and maybe that's out there. But I would say that this is not a privilege, that this is attainable for anybody who wants it bad enough.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, I'm not going to pretend like there aren't socioeconomic challenges that people face. I mean, I had certain ones that I faced in my situation. I had certain advantages that I had in my situation. So, we can't. I mean, I guess we could pretend like those aren't there, but the fact of the matter is, wherever you are, the first thing you need to do is change your mind and decide who you want to be. The second step is you need to surround yourself with those people that are around you, and find people that understand or have achieved what you did. And then you just need to mimic and figure out what they did to make that happen. Malcolm Gladwell, I talk about this often, he writes about something called desirable difficulties. Malcolm Gladwell talks about the 5,000 hour, is it 5,000 hour rule, 10,000 hour rule? I'm blanking on it. I want to say it's 10,000 hour rule.
Usually I hear about 10,000, yeah.
Yeah, 10,000. It's 10,000 hours. If you kind of extrapolate that, it typically takes about 5 years to hit 10,000 hours, depending on how often you're doing something. So if you look at that, you look at what the research he's done. Sometimes the things that we think hurt us, like losing a parent, is actually highly correlated to success. Like this isn't something that's desirable, right? But it's a difficulty that produces a mindset, that produces a shift. And I would say that shift occurred in me very profoundly when I lost my friend, because I realized that time is finite. I'm not going to live forever. And I said, this is silly. I'm riding around a bike, 20 plus hours a week in circles at races. I'm like, is this really what I'm meant to do? Am I going to be happy if this was my life? And the answer was no. And I made that shift mentally. I decided that I was going to do something different. I was going to do more with my life. I was going to honor not only the life that I was given, but also the life of my friend that he did not have anymore. And that propelled me in a different direction. But that's not something I would wish on anybody.
Yeah, definitely. I had a similar experience like 10 years ago. And I think those are really the moments that shake you up, and then you look at where you're at in your life, and you know, what does it, what would you change if you knew it's like a lot closer than you think? Because most of us, we think there's so much time left. And I actually say that a lot. I'm like, oh, I still have 6 years to go. I'm getting over 100, you know, but the reality is that's not always the case.
That's right. Yeah, we don't know. So, you know, and it's a balance, right? You plan for the future and you say, hey, I'm going to learn, I'm going to strive, I'm going to set big goals and, you know, big purposes for my life. But at the same time, you also have to enjoy the days that you're given when those opportunities arise.
Yeah. So what do you enjoy these days, given that you have the freedom to do what you want, when you want, where you want?
Yeah, there's really two answers to that, and those two answers are my two sons, and I really enjoy the experiences that I have with them. You know, they're both athletes. They play lacrosse. We ride bikes together. We enjoy traveling together, and seeing the passion kind of grow in them for some of these things, and getting to be there and experience it. It's amazing how quickly the time goes by. Personally, you know, in my kind of like, you know, from a more selfish perspective, I still enjoy riding my bike. I raced bicycles for like 20 years, on and off. After I quit, I kind of started doing some, you know, age graded stuff, just, you know, a little less seriously as I had my professional career. But I think it's important. I think, you know, I love the title, you know, of the podcast and, you know, of your website, you know, wealthy, and you got that well in there. I think, you know, financial health is important, but your true health is even more important than that. And, you know, people say, oh, you can't buy time. Hey, you can buy time in a lot of ways. You can also use money to improve your health and do those things. So I love to kind of explore my own physical, you know, boundaries, figure out, you know, what I can do to be healthy. And, you know, the fun thing is, you know, being healthy, it allows me to experience more things, you know, with my boys, with my wife. We can do a lot of different things, a lot of different adventures. And I think it also makes you more sharp mentally because, you know, if you're healthy, there's a huge correlation between physical health and mental health as well. Yeah.
And I think a life well lived, you know, you want to be vital and energetic, and you want to be capable of doing things. Like it's not really worthwhile to get old and not have the energy or the drive or the muscle to do something with it.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. So, so I love to travel as well. And, you know, if you're healthy, you can travel, you can spend more time while you're traveling, doing different things. My wife and I, you know, we enjoy, you know, good meals. We took our boys to lacrosse practice. They practice over an hour away from where we live. And we just did a little impromptu date night. So it's nice to be able to say, hey, I'm not going to, you know, have any calls this afternoon. You know, leave at 4:00 in the afternoon, and, you know, have a nice dinner and have the means to be able to enjoy that and the time to be able to do it as well.
Yeah. So how are you passing on the mindset that you build for yourself around money and living a good life to your two boys?
I'm sorry, did you say to my boys? Is that what you? Yeah. So first off, one of the big things that I've been trying to figure out, Hannes, is how do we share what we do? How do we make a bigger impact? You know, so, you know, again, we give away we give away our book, you know, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show. You know, our podcast is free, our website's free. We have a course that's going to be coming out at the end of 2022, which I can talk about how to get that here at the end of the show when it launches. And I think all those things, you know, ultimately my boys hopefully will kind of see and say, okay, like how did Dad do this? And maybe they'll take a look at that. Also, on our website, we have nextlevelincome.com/kids. I put together kind of a 5-step process of what we're doing to teach our children to become, you know, financially successful. And, you know, the big thing is that you have to first start talking about money with your children. You have to make it comfortable. You know, this doesn't mean, hey, this is exactly how much money we make. This is exactly how much we're worth. But, you know, when my boys ask, hey, how much did the car cost, Dad? How much is the house? They can look that up on the internet. I'm okay talking about that. You know, I'm okay talking about, you know, if we take a trip or do something, or we go out to a dinner, they need to understand like how much those things cost, where the money comes from. And then you have to teach children like what is investing. So again, in those 5 steps, I talk about kind of progressively how you can do that, from starting a bank account to teaching them different ways to invest. And this can be something as simple as matching dollar for dollar their savings in a bank, right? You say, hey, if you save $1 and you put it in the bank, I'm going to give you $1, because it's hard for children to, conceptually understand compound interest if they're 6 years old. But it's very easy for them to understand, hey, if I take this positive step for myself of putting aside this capital, this money, then I'm going to get a return on it, and I can give them an immediate return. So that's the first thing we did. And then we're also teaching them about businesses. So we have some local businesses that we own. I try to teach my boys those lessons. And then also kind of the final thing is talking about like the true cost of capital, the cost and the value of a college education, for instance. Like, what's the return on your investment? And, if you want to buy a car, when we bought a recent business here, I was explaining to my son, because he's a huge car guy, my younger son. He wants, I forget if it changes week to week and month to month. But, let's say he wanted a Ferrari and it was $250,000. And I said, well, hey, like, you can go. I was like, how long is it going to take you to make that money? You got to save it. You got to, pay taxes. You got to do all this stuff, and we went through it, and he's like, I don't know. And maybe 10 years, maybe, a long time. Right. And I said, well, what if you could take this money? What if you could buy a business that produced enough cash every month to pay for that Ferrari that lease? And then he's like, well, what's a lease? And we talked about that and how you could have this money working for you. So, just in that little conversation in the way to school, we talked about how there are different ways to afford some of the things in life. And that might not be what, the typical gurus would tell you, hey, don't, pay cash for a car. Like, you don't want to lease a car. Well, okay. What if I don't even buy a car? My business buys it, or I create a business or buy a business that pays for it. So, and if you're listening and you're like, Chris, I didn't quite get all that. That's okay. And I talk about this, in those 5 steps. Learning alongside your children is just as good, or sometimes even better, because children are smart. They pick these things up, right? They're like, well, I know my dad or my mom, they don't understand this themselves. But if you sit down and say, hey, we're going to learn this together, I'm going to go through it with you. Now, not only do you learn, but you're teaching your children those lessons, and you're creating this shift in mindset, and also teaching them how to be humble and be open to learning. And that's really a true key to long-term financial success, because you have to always be open to new possibilities, new perspectives on things. And really that's probably something that could help us in all aspects of life. Yeah,
definitely. What you just said, you have to be open to new possibilities. Just like, a recent conversation I had with a friend about bonus depreciation, and he just wasn't open to the possibility, despite it being fully legal and it's kind of phasing out. So he's truly missing the train on that one.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great thing. So, I use this example because, like, on the front of my book, we have the little Monopoly pieces, right? So, if I've been playing Monopoly for the past 20 years and I know the rules inside and out, I have experience in the game, and we sit down and we play together, I'm probably going to beat you. I'm probably going to understand. I'm probably going to beat you. And you might think that's not fair. You may say, oh, that's not fair. Chris always wins. Well, okay. Or you could say, how did you learn to play so well? Right. And it's interesting because in the financial world, in the political landscape, we tend to point the finger and say, oh, he didn't pay taxes, or they make too much money, or this is the definition of rich. And, these people are poor. These people aren't pulling their weight, rich or poor, whatever it might be. Well, what if we stopped and we step back and say, well, hang on a second. What are you doing? Why is this outcome happening? We just went through this period here where the Biden administration in America said, hey, we're going to give away $10,000, $20,000 of student debt, or we're going to wipe away that. Well, okay, like, whether I think that's good or bad, how did we get in that position in the first place? Are we solving the root cause of that? You have colleges with massive endowments, right? Massive endowments that have been hiking tuition at a multiple of what inflation is. And they're profiting from a government sponsored a government-backed system, and now we have the government that's now saying, hey, we are going to solve your problem. It's like, wait a minute, what's happening here? The system isn't really incentivized to show people how to get out of that, because it's a business in a lot of ways. But if we step back and say, well, hang on a second, how did you do it? These people are not paying taxes. They're creating jobs. We like these businesses in a lot of cases. What can we learn from them? And then the flip side is, hey, what are happening with people that are in this position that have accumulated student debt? What are they doing? What are the mistakes that happened? How can we solve this and figure this out? And that's where, if somebody tells you something, instead of saying, hey, that's not like that sounds too good to be true, or this or that, well, just be open, look at it, learn the rules. The IRS is just a set of rules. And if you follow the rules, whether you like it or not, the rules are the rules. I just watched so I'm going to continue down this path. I just watched a great documentary on Netflix called The Redeem Team. And it was a story about how...
I literally just watched it 2 days ago.
Awesome. So you'll appreciate this. So the team loses, right? And was it 04 they lost? Is that the year they lost pretty badly?
I think it was years.
They were kind of down. They were kind of sliding downhill, but they lost big, right? And they were interviewing the players, and they said, well, one of the things is that these teams that didn't have potentially as much talent, they were playing a different game. The rules of basketball internationally, even the basketball itself, it's different. So
I wasn't aware of that. That even the basketball itself was different.
Right. So again, this is a perfect example. So these guys say, hey. These players, phenomenal players, right? The best in the world, NBA players, right? Best in the world, paid millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in some cases. I think Kobe was worth $350 million or something like that at the time of his death. Well, they're literally playing a game. Now, it's not massively different, but it's different enough that they were getting beat by teams that understood it better. So if you see that happening in your own life, you can choose to stick your head in the sand and say, hey, we're better, or that's not how we do it. Or you can say, well, wait a minute, maybe we're playing the game a little bit differently, and maybe we just need to take a little time, step back, learn the fundamentals, learn how to play better as a team, learn how the rules are a little bit different, because the rules change in the financial world. Tax laws change. Understand them. And that's what I talk about in step 2 of our system. We talk about make, keep, and grow your money. Well, don't keep doing what you're doing and then try to grow your money. Figure out how to keep more of your money first. Are you set up properly? Do you have a tax strategist? Oh, I have a CPA that does my taxes. Okay. Well, are they actively saying, Hannes, here's how you can save money in 2023? It's the end of 2022. We should be talking about how to structure our finances in 2023. It's, you know what I mean? So, again, and it all comes back to where we started with this was mindset, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's mindset and being open to learning. And, I think what you just mentioned about the CPA, it needs a team of winners. Like it can't be,
great quote. Yeah.
It can't be the on the corner CPA that also just wants to get by with the day, because he won't go into the details of what can be done in your particular case to legally reduce the tax liability.
That's a great point. So let's talk about the financial industry, specifically in America, which I'm familiar with. So. If you said to most people, hey, do you have a financial advisor? Do you have somebody, a financial coach or somebody like that? A lot of people do, that are doing pretty well. But then if you said, well, are they financially independent? What percentage of people's financial advisors are financially independent? And then you have to ask yourself, look, Hannes, you're a chef. You look like you're in pretty good shape. I may question your ability as a chef because you're not overweight. I'm joking. But clearly my guess is you probably cook cuisine that is not only, very pleasing, to the palate, but it's also healthy. I can probably make an assumption based upon what you do, and you probably work with people that appreciate that skill set, right? Exactly. Whereas, and there's something to be said for that, but you have a certain skill set, and your personal life is a reflection of that professional skill set. So I'm not throwing shade. I'm not saying, hey, financial advisors aren't worth it. Far from it. Most advisors if you look statistically, earn what they charge. However, if you're trying to become financially independent, if you're trying to develop passive income streams and you're working with somebody that is actually prohibited contractually from even offering you those, which you may not know that, but most financial advisors, the vast, vast majority, are not allowed to talk about or offer the types of investments that the wealthy invest in, that you and I invest in. So if you don't know that, well, of course they're probably not going to be educated in it. They're not only they're not incentivized to do it, they may not be allowed to do it. And these are things that you have to figure out on your own and choose to do that. And that's not something the traditional, financial landscape in America, the financial industry is going to teach you. You have to go and do that yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And maybe this is something that you can touch up on a little bit more on how, I had that experience personally over and over again where, financial advisors are more like salespeople to their companies.
Yeah, so I think unfortunately, like when I was looking at going into that industry, so remember my MBA is in portfolio management, is financial and specifically in portfolio management, and I wanted to go into that industry. That was one of the options that I was looking into, but at the time it was very hard to become a fee-based only financial advisor or fiduciary. It's a lot more ubiquitous now. So I think the first thing you need to do is you need to understand like what the differences are. So there's salespeople. So like a financial advisor that works for a company, that sells a company's products, like they by definition are a salesperson. When I was in the medical device industry, I worked for specific companies. So I worked for Medtronic, biggest medical device company in the world. Okay. If I walked into an OR and I was in a surgery and a surgeon was using our product and then he said, well, hey, we need this other type of product as well. What do you think I'm going to recommend to him if he says, hey, do you have an option for that? Do you think I'm going to say, hey, let's use Johnson & Johnson's option? I guess maybe if I didn't have an option, I would say, well, hey, there's this other one because we want to make sure the patient has what they need. But I'm paid to understand, to be an expert in my company's products, and I literally would be fired if I didn't do that. So, and the surgeons understood that. And I'd say, well, I work for Medtronic, right? Like, this is what I'm going to recommend. I'd make a joke out of it. But yeah. The same thing happens in the financial world. It's not wrong, but now you have fiduciaries, you have fee-based only financial advisors. They can charge you a fixed fee. So let's say you have a $5 million portfolio. They may charge you $10,000 a year, but they will go through everything, your stocks, your bonds, your insurance, your real estate. And they'll say, hey, here's how you can put it all together. And if they're a fiduciary, they have to operate in your best interest. So, there's differences out there that we can understand. But ultimately, just like your health, you can go to a weight loss practice, or you can go to a doctor, or you can go to a trainer at the gym. But ultimately, you're going to get the best results if you understand the situation and have some education. So then you can have the right questions to ask. You can know that, hey, the ultra rich, they invest 20, 25, 30% of their total net worth into income producing real estate. That's pretty powerful, right? So if you go to your financial advisor and say, hey, this is what the wealthy really do, can I do something like this? That's probably going to inspire a different conversation, than if you walk in there and you just say, hey, I'm just going to invest in what's available in my 401k.
Yeah, but that takes some effort, you have to
certainly
educate.
Oh, effort and education.
Yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's overwhelming and it's intimidating because the financial world has its own language, right? And that's what we talk about, financial literacy. That's why you have to be financially literate. And again, our primary objective at Next Level Income is the education piece of helping people get to financial independence.
Yeah. What I find very interesting that in pretty much in from country to country, there is a small group of people who make that choice, and that alone I always tell myself that I simply can't listen to 95% of the people because they don't have the outcome I'm looking for.
And I would say it's probably even smaller than that. But yeah, I mean, if you look at the fact of the matter is nobody really wants to be average. Like nobody wants to be normal. We don't celebrate the average, the normal people in the world. We celebrate the heroes, the champions. And if you look at whether it's we were just talking about the NBA, right? If you look at like Michael Jordan or the Kobe Bryants, I mean, these weren't like really well-liked individuals in a lot of cases. These guys in this case were, pretty imbalanced. They were obsessed with their sport. Yeah. They were obsessed with becoming,
that's the right way.
With champions. But let's just say we take all the NBA players, that are out there, all the professional basketball players. Like what percentage are they in the world? Less than 1%, right?
Yeah.
But we watch them, we say, okay, what are they doing? How can we do that? Maybe we don't have the physical talent, but we can follow the routines. We know, like, their trainers write books. Tom Brady talks about like his diet. There's resources out there to do what professional athletes do. Well, do the same thing in your financial world. Go look at what the top 1% do. This whole BS about, the other 99%, like what are we doing? We should be celebrating the 1% and saying, how did they do it? They're the ones producing the jobs, the tax revenues. We're not, the economic train is not pulled by the caboose. It's pulled by the engine. It's pulled by that top 1%, right? Like, that's what's creating the momentum for the entire train. And I think, when we get into this political landscape, we start to vilify people instead of saying, well, wait a minute, nobody's perfect. There's criminals in the top 1%. There's criminals in the bottom 1% or the lower 1%. There's criminals in the 50th decile.
Yeah.
Financially, physically, all these things. There's just bad people out there. And we can point to those people and say, oh, they're not good and this and that. But we need to say, hey, what outcome do you want? Who's achieving that outcome? Let's look at what lessons apply, who I admire in that area, and then go after it.
Yeah. I think one of the things you just touched up on is that for me, being in that industry, working for those individuals, it's very obvious that they create a lot of jobs, like that lifestyle. Yeah. And a simple example, German yachts are very appreciated. So if you think about it, they are everywhere in the world. You will see them in the Bahamas and you see them overseas. They're creating jobs in the northern coast, like in Hamburg, and all of those yachts. What are those called? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
where
yards.
They're built. Yeah. And
shipyards.
Every time when I think about that, it's like that's probably like a good 5,000 to 10,000 people that's involved in getting that boat ready or that yacht ready here, And
wow, that's a good
I mean, think about how many pieces are just in an engine and how many suppliers are part of that, and then that's before you even get into the rest of the thing. Every hydraulic pump, every single rope, there's a supply chain behind that.
Absolutely. And it's like that across industries, right? And I think, if the statistics prove this out. So if you look at statistically who creates jobs, again, specifically in America, it's small businesses. Small businesses basically create 100% of the jobs. It's not the government. The government doesn't create jobs. They don't create wealth. The government functions off of the tax revenues of taxpayers, right? Who pays taxes. So, you have that aspect. And then you say, well, what about large businesses, Chris? Big corporations, they create jobs too. Not on the whole. Large corporations, they economize and create value for their shareholders by aggregating businesses and business units and becoming more economical. So that actually doesn't create jobs. On the whole, they actually remove jobs. So then you're left with, you say, okay, well, who actually creates jobs and therefore creates tax revenues and creates economic, prosperity? And you're left with entrepreneurs. And that goes all the way back to the beginning of our conversation, Hannes, which is the mindset. If you have the mindset of an entrepreneur exists they are rewarded by solving problems. So in the entrepreneurial space, if you solve a problem, you are rewarded economically. And So if you go out and you say, and you have that problem solver mindset, if you say, hey, I'm going to solve this problem, whether it's in someone else's life or in the world or in your own life, where you say, hey, I'm going to solve, my financial problem. I'm going to, figure this out. It's all the same mindset. And that is the mindset that from the top to the bottom creates wealth in massive ways, as well as small ways, if you look at even like your own, own family.
Yeah. And I think I, over the years, became more and more appreciative of what it actually takes to do that, and stand on your own feet, and as a business owner, or because you have to take calls that most people are not willing to do, and you have to work hours that many people are not willing, or go through learning curves, and there's a lot of personal growth in that journey too. And I think it's Tony Robbins who says, that business is a spiritual practice, and and it's not easy. It's, Yeah, no,
that's exactly right. It's, and again, it's a mindset. And look, it's not just like professional sports are not for everyone. Entrepreneurship's not for everyone. And, you can be a highly paid professional. You can be very skilled. We're talking about doctors and surgeons before. They provide an immense amount of value to society, to their patients, to the practices where they employ people and do all those things. Some of them are entrepreneurs. Some of them are not. Some of them are employees. And, it's not just limited to entrepreneurs, right? It can also be, people that are professionals out there as well.
Yeah. So looking at the next couple of years, what do you want to kind of, or what do you have in the pipeline? What are you working on?
Yeah. So, as kind of the brand of Next Level Income has grown, we're going into our 4th year of our podcast. So we started recording at the end of 2018. We launched our podcast in January of 2019, with the intent of curating and providing educational, content for people that want to become financially independent. I wrote my book and launched that in 2020. I wrote another book, kind of co-authored that in 2021, that talks about our specific life insurance strategy, which you can check out, called the Investment Optimizer on our website at the banking page. This year, I co-authored a children's book. So I wrote the financial chapter in that, which I summarized and I put on the website, nextlevelincome.com/kids. Next year, we're launching our course. So we're going to be launching an 8-week course called your 6 figures of passive income roadmap. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to me at Chris@nextlevelincome and Chris@nextlevelincome.com, and just put course if you want to in the subject line, because that has not launched yet. So we'll be launching that here in the next few months. But really, if you look at that, Hannes, the goal is to figure out how do we continually try to grow and impact more people? And I'm always looking for ways to make that happen. And again, frankly, like this, everything that I just mentioned, we haven't really profited from any of that specifically. All the educational resources are either free or low cost. The course will be very, very, very accessible, to most people that are out there. So all those things, we're looking, that's kind of to the next year. 2 years down the road, we'll see kind of, how the next year shapes up and how we're able to continue to grow, that educational branch as well.
And where are you trying to take this on a personal level? You're already free, what are your personal dreams and aspirations?
Yeah. So, we want to help as many people become financially as independent as possible. So, we have built a nice, robust portfolio of commercial real estate. We share that now through syndications with investors. So we have an invest link on our website that people can look out. And I touched on this earlier. I mean, really from a personal perspective, I'm trying to figure out, not only how to help teach other people, but really help teach my children, these same lessons that I've learned, and figure out, how can I help them, have this mindset, learn these lessons, also have that mindset of service as well, and an appreciation for life. So, it really, what I'm trying to do with respect to the brand in general, I'm also trying to do in my own household and teach my boys those same lessons.
Where did that money mindset start for you? You said it was like in your around when you were 20, but was there a particular individual in your life that sparked that? Or was it just that instant that you mentioned where your friend died?
Yeah. So no, it's that's a really great question. So I think if you look back, even when I was young, I had kind of a saver mindset. Like there was this Harvard study where they took children and they said, hey, either eat the marshmallow, or if you don't eat it, we'll give you more marshmallows. Like it's kind of like this saver mentality. Like you're gonna put off the immediate gratification for future growth. And I always kind of had that mindset. Like I'd save my money, so I always, for whatever reason, but it was probably ingrained in some way, shape, or form. And my mother was a saver, but she wasn't like, hey, you got to go do this stuff. It just happened, So there's something in me that kind of pushed me in that direction. But the same individual, Clint Provenza, that got me into cycling, gave me this money magazine. So he hands me this money magazine when I was a freshman in college. And he said, hey, you should read this. And it talked about starting a Roth IRA and really the magic, how compound interest worked. And I'll never forget that chart, that exponential growth chart. And it was talking about like how much you had to save to become a millionaire by the time you were 65. And it wasn't a lot. I thought, wow, like this is pretty cool. Like I need to learn about this, this concept. And I was always pretty good at math. So, I looked at it and I started to put models together and say, okay, what do I have to do? How much money do I have to save? How can I invest? What strategies can I utilize in the stock market? Like I said, ultimately I built that base on real estate. Now we look at, different crypto strategies and different things that are out there, because I don't think, there's only one path to do that. So I'm always kind of exploring and trying to figure that out. But that spark came from Clint, who also kind of drove that spark for racing inside me as well.
Yeah, nice. So thanks to Clint.
Absolutely. Thank you, Clint, if you're listening.
I mean, I always find that very interesting, because if I think back to my school, high school, all of that, there's one particular event that I remember where we were we had like a fake account that we could use to trade in the stock market. And that was initiated by the local bank. But that was like literally the only thing that I remember that got us anywhere close to it. And besides that, there's just like zero preparation on how to do any of that.
No, it's, and it's unfortunate, if we look at, and look, my mom was a teacher, my grandmother was a teacher, public school teachers, and the public school system doesn't teach financial literacy, and our teachers aren't taught financial literacy. I mean, we talked about the issue with student debt, right? Like the system doesn't teach financial literacy. Most people can't even figure out, or don't even know. If I said ROI, most people wouldn't know. They'd be like, Roy, what is that, like a rapper? No, it's return on investment. And, it's like, okay, so it probably is a rapper. So if you can't figure out or understand what return on investment is, how can you figure out if it's worth your time to do it or your money to do it? And the thing is, let's understand that time becomes money, right? If you're working. So money is time. If your time is your life, money equals life. So if you can't calculate an ROI, you literally don't know how to spend your life if you can't figure out the return on that investment that you make. And I think it's a tremendous disservice, which really drives, what we do. We have a local financial literacy course we started here in Asheville, with one of the local nonprofits, same thing for that reason. So I'm really excited about what we can do for our next generations in this country. What you're doing with this podcast, the ability to put this information out there. I mean, my son, we started talking about cryptocurrencies last week. And, I brought it up and he goes, you mean like Bitcoin and Dogecoin? And I was like, yeah. I was like, how do you know about this? He goes, I've been learning about it on YouTube. He's 10 years old, Hannes. And he knows more than for certain the average person about cryptocurrency, and he's learned it all on YouTube. So we really have some amazing resources out there. The information age has really allowed a lot of people to open their eyes, and I really appreciate the opportunity to join you today and hopefully contribute to that as well.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, thank you for taking the time out of your day to be with me, because I know you have a lot of things to do, or you could be with your sons right now, or take a run with your dog in the woods. So I appreciate. Oh,
I like to do that too. There we go.
Yeah,
absolutely. No, it's been my pleasure. Absolutely.
Well, Chris, where can people connect with you? I know you kind of already mentioned some of it, but...
Yeah, so the easiest way is to check us out at nextlevelincome.com. You can get our book there. You can get our podcast there. You can check out our investment optimizer there under the banking link. And you can also connect with me if you want to learn about our investments, clicking the invest link. I mentioned our course, which isn't yet released yet. So you can email me at chris@nextlevelincome.com, put course in the subject line, and I'll put you on our list to be the first to get that when it comes out.
Awesome. We will also make sure to put all of that in the show notes. And yeah, thanks again, Chris.
Hannes, it's been a true pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at The Path to Wealth. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Check out our upcoming guests and be sure to share it with all your friends and family that want to take their life to the next level of wealth.